so we can all sit in meditation while listening to the Dhamma. So today we have the intention to come and train our minds and to be entering into this meditation retreat. And we undertake this retreat for the purpose of training our minds, of practicing. And this is something which is really important, because these jittas, these minds, they have the nature of receiving and knowing sensory experiences. Or we could say that the mind is a knowing element that receives and knows all of the aramanas, all of the objects which enter into it. But the problem is that when our minds know these things already, they still don't have intelligence. They're still lacking in wisdom. And so we need to try to have kind of wisdom on a very basic level, at least, which is the wisdom of khanti, that of forbearance or patient endurance. And so we see the drawbacks of not having that. Because if we don't forbear, then great damage, harm will come. So we need to have that quality. As when we meet with something that satisfies us or we find dissatisfying, and we don't endure with that, then we'll just follow after our own moods and our own thoughts. And these are moods and thoughts which are brought up through the power of ignorance, and what we call sankharas, these conditions which are concocting these thoughts. And so there is the conditioned sankharas on the wholesome side and those on the unwholesome side. And if our mind carries on concocting, following the unwholesome side, then we act out of those, we speak out of those, and that creates agitation and chaos. So in the beginning, our minds need wisdom, and they need to have this right view first. And having views which are correct is very important. Because even though we may have a great amount of knowledge, we may have gained a bachelor's or master's degree or PhD, if we don't have right view, then we attach to that knowledge and the views that we gain, those our own views, too much. And that can bring to a lot of damage to our hearts. And it's possible that our minds get lost. So we need to then look after our minds, because our minds have the one who is deluded. At the moment they are the one that is deluded. So we need to take the one that knows to look after the mind, to be training it, to be watching over it, to be teaching it, in order to give it intelligence. It's like a child that has just been born. It doesn't know anything, it doesn't have any intelligence. And so it relies upon its mother, its father, its spiritual teachers in order to teach it. So it gets to know about the things of this world. Because in its current state, it's not able to teach itself anything. It's not able to do anything for itself. So it requires these caregivers in order to teach it so it can live its life in this world. And then it goes on to study so that it can then get work so that it's able to live well in the world. And it also needs people to teach it so that it has good qualities, so that it can live its life with peace and happiness. It needs to have this quality of sila, Dhamma, this moral integrity. So we need to receive these teachings. But a deeper meaning of this is that of the mind, that the mind needs wisdom, the wisdom to be able to accept the truth of how all conditioned phenomena are of the nature to arise and last for a bit and then cease. So there are these physical conditions, rupa, sankhara, and so rupa is everything which needs to break and fall apart, and it has that as its nature. And then there's Dhamma, the mental aspect, and so that's feelings, memory or perception, and then mental conditions and sense consciousness. And so together we call these the 5 khandhas. You can say the 5 aggregates or 5 heaps. But if we're going to talk about the very highest with regards to wisdom, so it's we say that all of these khandhas, they are of the condition to not be lasting, that they change, that they are stressful and they're not self, that they don't have any owner. And it's just that our mind doesn't realize that yet. It thinks that I am the owner of these things, and so then I attach to them, attach to all of these changing things as belonging to me. And so we can say that we are stealing nature. So like this body, we can look into this body, this collection of 4 elements first. And it's like our minds go and steal these bodies as belonging to us, and they really cling firmly to them. But when they change, then we experience suffering as well. And so when they change, the sankharas don't know that they're changing. So these 4 elements that have come together, they don't know that they've come together. They don't suffer. And when they break apart, they don't know what's happening. It's just nature taking place. But it's people that attach to these things as being me. And so we don't want to be separated from them. But this home which we've come to reside in, it's been born from ignorance, craving and attachment, and it's not able to last forever. And so the Buddha taught us to see that which does stay and last forever, that which never changes, which is Nibbana. So if we're going to talk about it in a conventional way, we could perhaps say that it's like a home that never changes, or like a crystal palace. We could use that way to describe it, that never changes. It's a way that we can kind of imagine it visually. But this body of ours, and those of devas and Brahma, gods, these are things that they can't last and they need to change. And the state of beings below the human, they also don't last, and they need to change too. But until they break apart, there's a lot of suffering that affects their minds. But that which doesn't change, and which is a state of perpetual happiness, is that of Nibbana. So for Nibbana to be able to, us to be able to see that, we need to see into suffering first, dukkha. See the causes of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the way of practice that leads to the cessation of dukkha. And so we come to study and know about these principles of the Buddha's teachings first. But there were some Zen monks that they wanted to listen to the Dhamma to gain a deeper understanding of it. And so the answer that was given to them was in the way of a metaphor. And this is something which I myself listened to, and I was really impressed with. a teaching of Ajahn Chah's that I really liked, that he taught through wisdom. And so when he taught, he didn't teach using the language or phrasing it in terms of suffering and the cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, the path of practice leading to the cessation of suffering. But when some Korean monks went to pay respects to Ajahn Chah, they asked him, why do we practice? What do we practice for? And what are the results of our practice? And so why do we practice then? And this is just a matter of nature. Or why do we eat? And it's just something very natural, isn't it? It's the most natural, kind of normal thing. Why do we eat? And there's no need to explain any further. Or why do we eat? What do we eat for? And when we've eaten, what is the result? And so this teaching of his was all about the Four Noble Truths. So when we train and practice, we need to have sincerity with that. We really need to set our hearts on it. Because we have sought out the opportunity and found the time in order to come and practice the Dhamma. We came here yesterday with Bhante Visuddhananda as the leader that brought many monks and lay people here. And we've gathered together, all 58 of us. There are monastics and laity who have come to practice the Dhamma at Wat Marp Jan. And so we've come to practice the Dhamma in order to further the saddha, the conviction, the faith that we have already, to make it even firmer than it already is. And in order for that saddha to become more firm, we need to gain an understanding into the Dhamma. So we have this faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha already. But if we gain an even more understanding into the Dhamma, or we see the Dhamma more than what we have already, then our faith will grow even more as well. And this just happens automatically. When we see the state of physicality and mentality, its true condition to arise and cease, then we see that within our own minds. We see that the lives of all beings, with each second that passes, are traveling towards death. And we see that within our own minds. And we see how this world is a very frightening place. So we gain that understanding within our own minds. The understanding how this body is a nest for sicknesses to be born in. And we don't know what sicknesses are going to come up for us. Ever since we've been born, we've met with many different kinds of illnesses. Maybe in the present moment we have different illnesses. In the future there'll be illnesses that come up too, until the time that this body breaks apart. And so we see that in this present moment clearly. You don't have any doubts there. We see the nature of dukkha, of stress, and so we try to seek a path out of that. We have an understanding into the arising and ceasing nature of conditioned phenomena, and we see the Dhamma. And then through that our faith becomes even firmer than it was. So with us coming together to practice on this occasion, we do this for the sake of furthering our faith, making that even stronger in the Triple Gem, and giving rise to right effort, and having mindfulness watching over the mind. And that the thoughts that we think, they may be a lot of thoughts at times, few thoughts at times, and that's just natural. But we have awareness and we watch over all of that. That we have this mindfulness over all of the things that occur. And if those thoughts are good, then we follow up on them, we do them. We have thoughts about creating merit, thoughts about being virtuous, about meditating, cultivating our minds, about practicing, then we do all of those. And the unskillful thoughts that appear, we just toss those out. We can give an example here. It's like going into a forest, and there are all different kinds of plants and trees in that forest. There are trees that are twisted and trees that are bent. There are different kinds of vines. And there are also straight trees as well. And we need to be able to discriminate between them and choose with wisdom the straight and strong ones, so that we can take those back and create pillars and homes out of them. So we need to have that wisdom to be able to discriminate and choose. Because our minds have all kinds of things within them, just anything can appear within the mind. And so the things which aren't good, we toss them out. The things that are good, we cultivate those. And we have this one that knows, always watching over our own minds. Because the one that watches over their mind will be freed from suffering. So we need to have effort in that regard. We set our hearts on this, strive. And we have these qualities already. We're all people who strive. You have great sincerity to you. You're really putting in your efforts and setting your hearts on this to the fullness of your energy. And so you've been intent to come here, and for some people it's been a year already that you've had this intention, that you've tried to find time off work and accumulate the time that you have off work so you're able to come for this whole period. You're able to come for an entire month. And that's really not an easy thing to do. It's a great opportunity you have, and it's also a great merit that you have as well. That this is a lot of merit that you do have, because in many countries, people just aren't able to do that. They can't take an entire month off work. For some people, they just get the opportunity to come to practice at a monastery for 3 days or 7 days, and then their mind starts getting peaceful, and then when it's peaceful, they have to leave and go back to work again. And doing it like this, it can be a bit of a waste of time. But for us, we have the time to come together for this meditation retreat. And so being in a meditation retreat, what that really means is that our minds should be with their meditation. So be with their meditation object. Because previously we've just let our minds go a lot. They've been concocting all kinds of things. So now we've come together for this meditation retreat. We should bring our minds to their meditation object. So Buddho, Dhammo, Sangho, or anicca, dukkha, anatta, as change and stress and not self, or the object of seeing everything as being empty. So we contemplate the Dhamma together. You listen to the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma, contemplate the Dhamma until you understand the Dhamma. And you're able to understand it even more deeply. But all of this depends upon right effort, doesn't it? We need to have this right effort. We need to have forbearance. We need to endure. And then come to meditate. And even though that can be quite difficult, we still do it. That you've traveled, and some of you from very far away. And sometimes the first day, the first night, not able to get any sleep because we're still adjusting. We've changed to a different place in the world, a different time. And so it can take 2 or 3 days before the body adjusts to that and it regains its state of balance. And so that's the nature of the body, that given some time, it can adjust itself and regain its balance. But for our minds to adjust and to gain a state of balance, we need to train them. We need to take the one that knows to teach our minds. so that they have mindfulness in the body, in the feelings, in the mind, in Dhamma, what we call the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And so really be firm in your sincerity in doing this. Because when we practice, it's not like our efforts are in vain. That if you really set your hearts on this, then in this life you will need to see the Dhamma. Whether that's a lot or a little, you do have to see the Dhamma if you carry on practicing without stop, if you carry on going on a correct path of practice. And so you shouldn't have doubts about this. You just keep up with it, persevere until the mind reaches a state of peace. And however much samadhi you're able to gain, then use that samadhi and that peace to contemplate so that you gain an understanding of the Dhamma. And then through that, gain even more faith in the Buddha Sasana. And so all of you who come, the lay people, the lay males and lay females, you come very close to the monks. And so then, as you carry on practicing, you too can be people who become awakened as well, become Savaka Buddhas, so these kind of awakened disciples. So may you gain success in this meditation retreat, and may you all be blessed.